Facebook has done multiple things in the past where they play with mass emotion. They could start showing you really nice things to have you feel good. They can also start showing you really things that are, hey, acts of terrorism, acts of this and that, and panda dies, or things that make you sad. Now, what about using AI and mass manipulation in a positive way? I guess this can swing both ways. Here's an example. I wake up in the morning and my phone tells me that Trump mentioned something, and usually it's not pandas getting off the red book or something like that. Usually not something good, but either way, we wake up and we see our phone. Sometimes we check Facebook, Instagram, whatever. That can set our entire day. What if you wake up and you set a setting in your phone that, hey, you want to be focused, so instead you get quotes from Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos or Kim Kardashian, and that sets your day, that sets your mood for the day, or vice versa. For example, if you go to Google Analytics, you can see that there's very specific trends in people searching sadness, depression, suicide. Around summer, sadness, depression; around Christmas, holidays, suicide. The huge spikes. So for example, we can use AI and mass manipulation to lower some of these feelings, like sending out mass messages, or having all the networks promoting positive things to lower these things. And this can be done without people even knowing this, and it has been by Facebook and probably other networks. So what do you think, an open-ended question, where do you think this can be most impactful? And should we ever worry about mass manipulation from AI in such a way?
If it leads, you ever see the media deal? If it leads, at what?
If it leads, it leads.
If it bleeds, it leads, right? So is there money made in everybody feeling good? There really isn't, right? So if you don't think that mass manipulation is actually happening, it's been happening if you look at history over the 1950s, 1960s. I'm not a propaganda guy. I don't care about propaganda, but I do care about science, right? So people have taken a lot of time to invest in how they can actually sway large populations of the public in order to create more economic results for them individually, right? And I think everyone probably in here agrees with that, right? So, can you use it for something that actually relates to a positive impact on society? And some people do, but as a result, it typically does not create enough of a return for economic return to push people to a place where they're willing to use that manipulation in order to help people. So I would say that yes, it's a really good thing, and I would love in the utopian world for that to be the way that we actually led, the pathway we actually led, but there's so much other stuff that's going on that drive us on fear of loss, right? So we always have this fear of someone's going to take away our birthday or start eating our leg. Those are the two things that I actually worry about that I'm actually going to change my behaviors with. But those are the things that people actually start thinking that something's going to happen, so they have this anxiety and this stress. And so what I always say is, in order to make that happen, we as people have to actually change our behaviors and habits of what we're able to consume, and start realizing that people on an everyday basis are manipulating us to either buy something or engage in a certain way or lead us down some sort of socio-economic or political path. And no, I didn't do marketing before I did this, so.
So I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that that is often true. However, there are a lot of big successful companies that deliver a service that people really like, or create a product that people really like and treat their customers really well, and their customers come back and want to use them more and more in the long run. Like, take Facebook, for example. I and a lot of other people don't use Facebook very much anymore because like the scientific evidence is very real. Facebook use and social media use is directly correlated with decreases in baseline happiness. There's not that much that makes you less happy throughout the course of your day, like in your actual life, making you permanently just less happy all the time. Like, getting enough sleep makes you more happy, meditating makes you more happy. There are not that many things that are like well established that definitely make you way less happy, but social media use does. And when I was in like high school and college, I did use Facebook more. I now have a Chrome add-on called Newsfeed Eradicator, which replaces my home feed with inspirational quotes. So whenever I go to Facebook, I see an inspirational quote to be productive. And a lot of people don't the usage among people around my age of Facebook is decreasing like very, very rapidly, and that's because they built a product that's absolute shit now, and people are starting to realize that. Now, with that said, like they are a very big, very profitable company, and they have a lot of other things going for them, and people are still using Instagram in like increasing quantities, right? But if you build a product that is actually good for your users, I think in the long run, you're in a much, much better place. Like if you look at the history of like web design, in the 90s, there were all these like random different websites that no one has ever heard of that basically owned the entire internet, and now they like mostly don't exist or are complete shit or were like chopped up and sold for parts. When like Google came along, and Google was like, I don't know, like think back to like all the different search engines that existed back in the 90s and early 2000s. Like Google was like just so simple. All it was a search bar and a search and an I'm feeling lucky button, rather than a huge portal full of all sorts of bullshit and banner ads and pop-up ads and stuff like that. And that was pretty revolutionary, and people liked it a lot better. Like Gmail came along and was like a simple, awesome, easy to use UX, and people loved it. Like I used to sell Gmail invites for thousands of dollars back in 2004 when they first, when there was like an invite for it online, and basically like they built a better product, right? A better product that people actually would prefer to use than anything that existed back then. And I think I think in the long run, like the companies that do that, like yes, there will be lots of shitty companies, but there's also enormous value to be created by treating your users really, really well. And it's also sort of interesting to think about sort of the far future. If we assume that basically progress continues at all, even at a very, very slow pace, a much, much slower pace than exists today, then we can sort of conclude that by definition, artificial general intelligence will come to exist. Like humanity hasn't been around for that long. The Industrial Revolution only happened like slightly over 100 years ago, and think how much progress we've made since then. And technological progress is increasing at an accelerating pace. So what that means, like it's really hard for us humans with our limited, puny little human brains to comprehend what exponential growth actually looks like. But basically, what that means is that over the course of the next 100 years, we will make as much progress as 10,000 years of the past year of progress. And we made a lot of progress in the past year of progress too, like in AI, for example. So one logical conclusion of the idea that artificial general intelligence, assuming that humanity doesn't first go extinct due to climate change or something else like that, one interesting conclusion, if artificial general intelligence is going to wind up existing, is that we will probably live in a post-scarcity world. Yes, so we'll have, everyone will have way more money than they could possibly want and way more resources than they could possibly want. And if that is the case, then so what will, like there'll be a lot of interesting questions, like what are people going to do with their time and not know what to do. A lot of people will probably just eventually people will figure out like different interesting creative pursuits to occupy them all the time and discover the meaning of life or something, we don't know. But like one interesting thing about that is that if this is if this is likely the inevitable future for humanity, then we might as well design products and services that increase people's agency rather than decreasing it. In the meantime, we might as well create products that do subtly prime people, as you're saying, to be the best versions of themselves. Because, go ahead.
Sorry? You want me to respond?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so there's 7.5 billion people in the world, right? Do you agree with that? You don't know because I give you that bullshit like on the news. So they told you there's 7.5 billion people in the world. And to say that there's an abundance of anything in the future is living on some sort of utopian world that somewhere along the line we're going to solve all of these problems. So let me ask you a question. You guys live in LA? Most people live in LA?
Yeah.
Homeless population, what's happened to it?
Crazy.
What?
It's crazy.
Is it going down?
No, it's gone up.
All right. Anybody look at the crime statistics? What happened yesterday? What happened yesterday?
Shooting, that's shooting.
Right, did that go up or down? All right, so if we start to use or think that problems are going to solve themselves by having some sort of intelligence that is injected in the marketplace, it will never happen, right? And if we start ignoring the problems that are actually happening and looking at AI as a solution for problems we have every day, we're going to have a fucked up environment. Pardon my language, sorry, right? The reality of it is that these are all just tools that we can actually use in the marketplace in order to make our place, our environment better or worse. Right? So we have to make decisions as individuals on what we're going to do in those environments. If this is a conversation about AI, and if we're going to actually use artificial intelligence in a way that can actually help us in the technological world to give us either better comfort or better opportunities, is that going to happen? Yes. Is it going to happen overnight? The answer is no. Is there something afraid of? No. But if we want to actually say in the next 50, 100, 200 years, if I had to look at probabilities, and I'm a math guy, and by the way, before I did this, I was a negotiator in the Middle East for 6.5 years, right, in places you wouldn't want to go, right? So when I tell you that I actually did math and then I went to something that was totally different, I did, right? And if you ask me if in that 6.5 years things got better, they didn't get better, they got worse, right? So I look at the things that are actually happening in the world, and I look at the technology we're able to build in the marketplace, and I want to create a solution, but I also don't want to live in a utopian world where I dig my head in the sand and try to figure out if someone else can actually solve the problems that me today have to solve.